Are you struggling with how you'll know when it's time to retire? Well, if so, stay tuned to this week's episode of the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with my good friend and co-host Sarah Samuels, and today we're going to talk about how to know when is the right time for you to retire, because there's several factors here. Part of it is finances, right? But the other part of it is mentally. When are you ready mentally? And today, Sarah, we're going to discuss both those.
Well, Dave, it's great to be here with you and, of course, with all of our listeners. And before we talk about how you mentally know and financially know when you're ready to retire, I know that last week you were actually working out of our Retirement Income Source SFG office in Connecticut. So how was that?
It was nice. Well, it's funny because the weather's finally coming around a little bit. So it was nice to go up there, and I got to spend a time with one of our offices up in the Springfield area, doing a little client appreciation event, which was always nice to get back in to see people who were being positively affected by the income message and who are living a better life because of it. So it was really nice.
Yep. Well, we have a lot of listeners that are
I hope you missed me.
They're based out of Connecticut. You know, of course, I missed you, but I want to make sure that our listeners know that they can visit the Retirement Income Source SFG in Connecticut to talk with some of those advisors up there.
Any one of those offices in Connecticut or Massachusetts or New Hampshire. Yeah.
Or Rhode Island as well, I believe.
That's right.
Yep. So, Dave, let's talk a little bit more about how you know emotionally, mentally that you're ready to retire.
Right, because of course we're going to get to the money part of it later in the show, how you know financially when you can afford to retire. But emotionally, mentally, it really, I think, depends upon two things. One is, am I just not enjoying work anymore? Now, you might not be enjoying it, but it might be because the company, you can switch companies. Or it might be because the whole profession has changed and you don't enjoy it anymore. And if you can do something else, great. If you can't, well, another story. But the more positive side is when you're getting excited about retirement, what retirement looks like. When you say, hey, I know what retirement looks like. We want to travel. We want to do this. We want to do that. What's important to you? We're getting older. We need time to do this. Because people, Sarah, as you know, that are moving toward a vision of what retirement could look like, something that's pleasurable, often live a much happier and more fulfilled retirement than those who are just moving away from a bad job or maybe a career that's changed negatively.
Absolutely, Dave. That's a real psychological transition. And we have a question from someone who's called our Ask Dave hotline. Again, I want to encourage our listeners. If you're a loyal listener, you already know the number, but I want to encourage all of our listeners to reach out on that hotline. It's 800-822-1111. And if we use your question in a future show, we'll make sure that you get a free copy of Dave's Retirement Income Source book. Let's get to our question. It's from Shannon out of Connecticut. Shannon says, I'm a teacher, but education is really not what it used to be. And honestly, I'm not sure what else I can do as a career. I think I'm ready to retire, but my husband will have to work for a longer period of time. What's your best advice?
Oh, Shannon. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this from teachers today. Education is not what it used to be. The kids are different, of course. Our generation, the generation before us probably said kids were different when we were kids too, but it does change over time. And I know teachers' hands are more tied now in terms of what they can do to protect themselves. So I get that. In education is one of those tough things because it's one of those things I think where you can't go back and change. It's like, what else are you going to do if you're a teacher right now? If you have a specialty topic, let's say you're a college professor, you might be able to go back into private work rather and do that work. But if you're a teacher in grammar school or middle school, you probably can't. You don't have an alternative. So if you've exhausted your alternatives in things that you might enjoy more, and if those simply are not issues for you anymore or not possibilities, then if you're that miserable, then I guess the real issue is how's your husband feel about this? Is he okay with it? Is he okay working a little bit longer? And how much longer will it be? Is it 2 years longer, 4 years longer, 10 years longer, right? So I hope you can stay with us, Shannon, for the second half of the show here where we talk about financially how to know when you're ready or how far you are from retirement, financially speaking. But assuming that you're within a reasonable time frame and assuming that your husband's on the same page and he loves you first and foremost, and therefore he's willing to work a few more years if it takes that to free you up today, well, then as long as that's the case and you're both going in with the eyes wide open, then there's no problem with it. But that's the most important thing, is how to work it out between the two of you. So again, hope you're listening. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the financial part coming up later on the show.
Shannon, thank you so much for calling the Ask Dave hotline. Again, that phone number is 800-822-1111. And we encourage all of our listeners to call in, especially if you have a question about your retirement. You're listening to The Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels. I'm here with David Scranton, and we are talking about how you can truly know when you're ready to retire. So first, we're talking a little bit about the right side brain of it, right? The emotional part of it, the whole concept really of looking towards something versus moving away. And we'll get to the finances, Dave, but I really want to unpack that whole concept again of looking towards a goal versus getting away from something you don't like, and how that can affect you a lot psychologically. Especially when you're heading towards retirement.
Right. Now, let's say Shannon were single. Okay. Well, then it would be really simple. Can she afford to retire or not? If the answer is really no, well, then she'd have to suck it up and keep working whether she wants to or not, unfortunately. In this case, she's married. So if it means her husband's working a little bit longer and they're okay with it, whatever that amount is, that's fine. That's fine. But again, that's the moving away goal. The most fulfilling retirement, as I said a moment ago, is those people who are moving towards something positive. They know what they're moving toward. They're excited about it. So I would intentionally try to get there, even for somebody like Shannon. I think it's time for them to take time for her and her husband together to work at, hey, what do we want to do in retirement? What's exciting? So that so he's now got a good motivation for him to retire too and work toward that end goal. And then what does that look like? Because saving for retirement, going through what you need to do, making sacrifices today can be a grudge sometimes. But what makes the grudge easier to handle emotionally is when you're excited about the future. You're excited about where you're headed. And, we've talked about some ways to do that, right? Whether it's practicing retirement, taking more vacation time, staycations, things like that.
Yep. I think what you said is really important, Dave, that when you're married or you're in a relationship, you're planning to hopefully grow old with someone, you have to make sure you're on the same page. And then you have to make sure, I think, that both people feel like they're working towards the same goal, so you don't end up with that resentment potentially. If one person's not working, someone has to work harder. Sure. But when you both set those goals, I think that you can really come together. So how can people do that process of setting goals together?
Well, one trick that we always talk about on the show, Sarah, as you know, is interview people. Take people, friends of yours, that even family members that have retired, and interview those that seem to be happy in retirement, interviews those that seem to be unhappy. Find out what they're enjoying, what they did to prepare, what they would have done differently this time before retirement if they had a second do-over, right? And also what they're unhappy with, right? Those that retire that are unhappy, let's try to get to why. What do they miss? What could they have done differently? And just interviewing people. Make it, it's like when you interview for jobs, right? You're in your career, you're switching careers, maybe your 30s, 40s, 50s. You're always thinking about, okay, interviewing different companies, different people in different roles. What do I ask, right? Well, the same thing here, because this is like the last career of your life, and it could be 30 years longer. So interview people about how to do it, just like you would if you went for a job. But there's more to that. There's also the part, Sarah, about practicing retirement. So coming up, we're going to talk about how to practice retirement even while you're still actively working, and to learn firsthand what you like, what you don't like, and what retirement might look like for you. Stay tuned. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and you're listening to The Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
Thanks for joining us today here on the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we've been talking about how you can really be sure and know that you're ready to retire. And part of this is really doing the emotional work and doing the practicing behind retirement to figure out what your goals are and making sure that you're aligned with your partner if you have a partner. Dave, you said something pretty profound a couple minutes ago where you said retirement is really going to be the last career that you have. And I think for all of our workaholics out there listening to it, thinking of retirement as your final career is a fantastic way to look at it, But there's actual steps that people can take before they leave the workforce to see what retirement could look like for them.
Sure, and there's some things you can't do. For example, you might not have grandchildren yet, but you might have grandchildren when you're retired, and that changes the equation. And frankly, part of your retirement job might be taking care and spending time with grandchildren, right? So it's not perfect, but we call it practicing retirement, where you try to take time off. So first of all, you have to think about, okay, where do I want to retire? If you're sure, well, then that makes it easier. What if you're not? Well, now you have to take time and travel to different locations and figure out where you might want to retire. And you probably don't want to stay in a hotel. You probably want to do like an Airbnb. And stay in the outskirts, different places, and try different places and get a feel for, hey, if I were here long term, what would I, would I be okay? Would I like this? But it's important it's nice if you can stack vacation time together, because if you can stack vacation time together, you can have a longer period, right? Sarah, 1 week vacation is always glamorous, right? I mean, I'll get on to Miami for even a long weekend or a week, and it's fun, it's glamorous. But if I had to live in Miami, I wouldn't want to do it, right?
It could be too hectic and not very much fun.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So in some ways too artificial, right? So it's not what you want. So you have to take a longer time. So if you can stack together 2, 3, even 4 weeks, and you could practice retiring in different locations, that's a plus. Now, what if you do know where you want to be, and let's say it's right where you are today? Well, then you could do the same thing and practice retirement with staycations, right? Stay at home. Okay, what do we want to do? And plan it. And again, 1 or 2 weeks isn't enough. And don't get caught up with all projects around the house, because the biggest mistake people fall into is when they retire, the first 6 months of retirement is fun. It's the honeymoon period. They're getting the whole list of projects done around the house and they feel good. But when those projects are done, then it's like, now what do I do, right? So refrain on that staycation from doing those projects. Think about, if we were retired, what will we be doing today? What will we be doing tonight? What will we be doing tomorrow, right? And that's really what you have to do. And hopefully you've done this after you've interviewed people who have retired successfully and unsuccessfully. And you've come up with your own list of what you think you'd want to do in retirement.
Yep. It's all about shaping your own goals and your vision for what retirement looks like. And I want to encourage all of our listeners to please call in on the Ask Dave hotline and leave us a voicemail with your question for the show, or if you have a question for one of our retirement income source advisors. Again, that phone number is 800-822-1111. We would love to hear from you. Our next question comes from Janet in Connecticut. Right. Janet says, my husband and I want to retire early, and we think we're ready. We think we have enough saved, but how can we really be sure?
All right, Janet. Well, of course, the first part is everything we've talked about so far on the show, right? Make sure that you're moving toward, make sure you know what retirement looks like. It sounds like you planned this for a while, so you probably know, but be sure. Don't just assume it. I've had people who wanted to retire early for a long time, and they've retired, and after a year, they found out they're miserable. They're back in the workforce because it sounded sexy, but they didn't really plan what retirement's going to look like. So don't forget that part, Janet. But now we get to the money part. And you're probably asking about, okay, lump sum. How much lump sum do I need? Because that's what people think, right? You think about, do I have enough to retire? It's how much money do I have in all my retirement accounts together? Well, first you have to think about how much income you need and want in retirement. Your I need goals, which is how much income you need to live the same lifestyle you have today. The easiest way to do that, Janet, is to subtract all the expenses that are going to go away from your current income, like saving money in a 401k, which you won't do when you're retired, maybe even a mortgage payment if you plan to have your mortgage paid off when you're retired, maybe even the FICA tax that retirees don't pay, right? Subtract the expenses that go away in retirement, any savings or unnecessary expenses, and then you'll get down to, this is the amount of income I need in retirement to live the same lifestyle I have today. Again, same lifestyle I have today. But then more time on your hands means you're going to want to do more things in retirement. More things means you're going to want to spend more money. So now you have to figure out, how much do I increase that I need goal, income goal, to an I want income goal, to be able to do these extra things that are in that your dream of retirement. So that's the first step, is finding out how much income you need to live the same lifestyle you have today, and then how much income you want to do all the extra things that are going to soak up all that extra time on your hands. Now, I hope you're listening, Jan. I hope you can stay tuned because throughout the rest of the show, we're going to talk more about how to back that into a lump sum number. So, Janet, I hope you're with us.
Janet, thank you again for calling the Ask Dave hotline. That phone number is 800-822-1111. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to help you get connected with one of our retirement income source advisors in Connecticut. Thank you for listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's always about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we're trying to answer the question of how do you really know if you're ready to retire? So, Dave, we've talked a little bit about the right brain side of things, right? Mm-hmm. How you know if you're emotionally ready, how you can move towards something, and how that's always going to work out as opposed to just moving away or leaving a job you don't like anymore. But people want to know how do I know if I've saved enough? We always hear the lump sum. People want to hear, okay, I need $2 or $3 million. And when you invest for income, it's a whole different way of figuring out that lump sum because it's all about those I need goals and I want goals.
Right. And it takes the emotion out of it. When you start thinking about how much you need in a lump sum, now you're artificially thinking that, okay, well, I have to factor in what if we get market drops? Yeah. What if it's a short-term drop? What if it's a long-term drop like we had in the first 13 years of the 21st century, right? You have to think about, what if taxes go up? What if inflation's higher? You have to think about all these things, right? But those really aren't the things you have to worry about. What you really have to worry about is how much income your investments are generating. So the reason I changed Janet's thought around from a lump sum to an income answer is because once you know how much income you need, now you can look at how much income your portfolio is generating. And then it takes the emotion out of it, and the lump sum fear goes away. And you remember my story about my executive in Hartford, right? That a real smart guy, 30 plus years ago, his name was Ed, and he was a nervous wreck about retiring, and he had $6 million in municipal bonds back in the day when they were paying 6%.
I remember this guy
right.
because he was so much saved in great accounts.
Top executive, smart guy, right?
Yes.
But he had $6 million at 6%, right? So do the math. That's $360,000 of income. He's spending $150,000. He wanted me to prove to him mathematically he wasn't gonna run out of money, and I understood it was a big emotional decision because he was still looking at the $6 million. What I had to share with him was that, look, you're bringing in $360,000 of income. You're not talking about taking principal. Market fluctuations don't matter. You're going to engineer an inflation hedge because you have $210,000 to reinvest.
Every year he's reinvesting half of the income coming in if his goal is only $150,000.
That's right. More.
Exactly. Yeah, more than that.
So because of that, because of his fear, because he was looking at it as a lump sum, and I was looking at how much income was being generated, I was able to calm him down and realize that he wasn't touching principal. If these bonds dropped by a third, it didn't matter as long as they kept paying the income. So again, that's why I made such a big deal about the I need income goals and I want income goals in terms of how to determine when you're ready.
Yep. And there might be listeners out there that feel kind of like Ed. They want someone to reassure them and to prove to them, hey, this income method is actually going to help me have all my money, run out of money, or run out of life, essentially, before I run out of money. But we're going to talk about how you can really know which investments you should invest in to generate income. We're going to talk about the financial part of retirement and how you know you're ready. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and today we're helping you answer the question if you really know if you're ready to retire. We've talked a little bit about the emotional side of it and goal setting and how you can really figure out what your I need goals are versus your I want goals in retirement. And that really leads into the other side of it, Dave, the financial side, where have you saved enough for retirement? And you mentioned your client, Ed, who was extremely worried that he was going to run out of money. He was convinced you were withdrawing principal, and you really had to sit with him and explain and mathematically prove to him that when you invest for income, you're not going to run out of money.
Yeah, it's he was thinking about, unfortunately, like a lot of advisors talk about retirement these days, withdrawing money. They look at it as a lump sum of money you saved. I'm going to make withdrawals, and how long will those withdrawals last? And that's how we're programmed to think. That's how I'm taught as a financial advisor. That's how most financial advisors are taught. So, of course, when you're talking about withdrawing from that lump sum, now it's kind of like, okay, what are all the variables that can make me run out quicker, right? And you start worrying about it. How long might I live? How much inflation might be between now and then, et cetera, et cetera. And the problem with those withdrawal methods, as we know, is they're based upon a somewhat complicated mathematical theory called Monte Carlo analysis, which takes all these outcomes over time and almost an infinite number of outcomes, puts it in an algorithm and says, well, you've got a 93% chance of not running out of money. On the surface, that sounds pretty good, but that means there's a 7% chance that you do. That means out of your friends, 1 out of 14 of you will run out of money. And you have to ask yourself, what if I'm the 14th that runs out, right?
And I think for a lot of our listeners, they probably heard this before. And even the message that they're getting from their advisor, that advisor is not going to be emphasizing that they could be part of that 7 or 10% of people that could run out of money. They're focusing on the big.
Well, look, 93%. That's
exactly,
right. But it's like Goose, right? Remember Goose from Maverick? He was the guy that
Top Gun,
he's the guy that died. That's right.
Yes.
So it's like the old game when you're a kid, duck, 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 goose, right?
Or
and
musical
you run.
chair. Someone's going to be without a chair.
That's right. Well, are you the goose?
You don't want to be the goose.
Are you the goose? Or are you the duck? So it's a risk, and that's why it's when you start to do any withdrawal method like that, you have a chance of running out of money. The only way to make sure you're not running out of money is to live off the interest and dividends, to live off the renewable resource, and not touch the principal. Right? If you don't touch the principal, you can't run out of money.
Exactly.
Unless all your investments fail and go to zero. Yeah. So part of it is this 3% withdrawal or 4% withdrawal or even 5% withdrawal strategy. I can withdraw money. That adds a risk to you as a retiree. But also there's buckets of money. Some advisors say, well, this bucket you're going to spend down from years 1 through 10, this next bucket from years 11 through 20. And that just increases your risk of running out too. It's buckets of money. It's like just a little fancier withdrawal strategy. And you know, Sarah, I believe strongly that none of those is the way to a solid, confident retirement.
Yep, exactly. Well, we have a great question from our Ask Dave listener who I think you can help explain certain things to, because we have a caller from Thomas in Connecticut. Again, that phone line is 800-822-1111. We would love to hear from you. Please leave us a voicemail. Even if you just want to get connected with one of our retirement income source advisors in Connecticut, we can help you with that. So I encourage all of our listeners to give that phone number a call. But we have Thomas who reached out and he said, Dave, I know you talk about this equation. I think I know the equation he's talking about, but I know you talk about this equation, but I get confused sometimes about where the total return comes from. Can you explain it?
All right, Thomas. Well, I'm kind of glad you asked that because, you know, I do this every day. So for me, this is easy, right? And maybe for some financial advisors, it's easy. But the reality is that's not how you were trained as an investor to think about how total return breaks down, right? So the equation you're referring to is total return equals income plus growth. Total return equals income plus growth. Income is interest and dividends. It's things that get paid out to you, which you can reinvest if you're still working and accumulating, or you can take in cash if you're retired. And growth equals capital appreciation. It's when something goes up in value. You buy it at one price and it goes up to another. Think of it like rental property, right? Rental property, you make money in two ways. Number one, the rental income. That's the income side of it, but also the growth or capital appreciation side where the rental property can increase in value. Every investment, not every investment, but a lot of investments have both components. Some investments have just one, but a lot of investments have both, right? And earlier on in your career, you didn't care about where your return came from. You just wanted to make money on your money. But as you get in retirement, all of a sudden, the source of that return is important. And most smart people go to an income first, growth second mindset because they still want to get both, but all of a sudden the income is prioritized as they approach retirement. Now, Thomas, this is Thomas, right? Yes, it's Thomas.
Yes, correct.
Thomas, this is, an issue where, because, as Jay, my partner in our Connecticut office always says, the problem is nobody talks about total return. They talk about growth. And when you're working, growth of your money means that your account's going up in value. And you don't know where it's coming from. So if it makes it easier for you, you can retitle that equation to say growth of my money equals income plus capital appreciation. It's the same, but the terminology might make it easier because you're not used to talking in terms of total return, right? Those are pointy hat people like me that talk about total return. You're thinking about, I want my money to grow. I want my 401k to grow. So if it's easier for you, think growth equals the income component plus the capital appreciation component, and maybe that helps.
Thomas, thank you so much for calling in to our Ask Dave hotline. Again, that phone number is 800-822-1111. We'd love to hear from you if you have a question for the show, or if you just want to get connected with some of our retirement income source advisors in Connecticut. Just call 800-822-1111. Thank you for spending some time here with us today on the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and I hope that we've helped our listeners start to really answer that question, am I ready to retire? Because there's so much more to the income first approach than just covering those I need goals, right? Like we talked about the I want goals part, and that's the parts that you really should be looking forward to in retirement, the fun parts. But in order to get those goals accomplished, Dave, you got to learn how you can maximize your income. So maybe you can explain how income specialists do that for their clients.
Right. Well, the first thing is, I think, as a regular listener, you need to think about, how do I know how much income I'm currently getting, right? So it depends where your money is. If it's in a 401k, you probably don't know. That isn't separated. The income and capital appreciation are not separated on your statement. If you have a brokerage statement through one of the big brokerage houses, you may or may not have it. And usually it's over to the right. If you go over the right, it says something like estimated annual income, estimated annual yield. And you have to think about how much income it's generating. Those are the titles that you're going to get. Okay. Now, what I'd suggest you do is take that number for actual annual income that's being spun off by the portfolio. Those are the interest and dividends. That's the rental income, right? And divide it by the value. And find out, is your income 1% a year, 2% a year, 3, 4, 5? What percentage is it? But then you have to subtract your management fee. So now you need to know how much your advisor, if you have an advisor, is charging you. So let's say you're getting a 3% income payment. You have $1 million lump sum to keep the numbers round, and you're getting $30,000 a year. $30,000 a year divided by $1 million, that's 3%. You're getting charged a 1% management fee by the advisor. That comes out of the $30,000. So your 30 goes down to 20. That's how much income you have in retirement. Now, if that's enough for you to hit your I need and I want goals, great. If it's not, then you have to think about making some changes to increase that income. And this is where an income specialist can differentiate between stocks that are more capital appreciation based versus stocks that are an income first, growth second mindset. That income specialist also knows probably a lot more about bonds and preferreds and things that really are designed to generate more income than your average financial advisor. So look at the income, first of all, that you're getting. Is that sufficient? And if it's not, well, I'm here to tell you, you could get 5, 6, even 7% of income. And if that's what you need to retire, but you're not getting it, well, then, yeah, you need to consult with a true income specialist.
Absolutely. And once again, I just want to encourage all of our listeners, if you're looking for an income specialist, you can always call that Ask Dave hotline. That phone number is 800-822-1111, and our team will get you connected with an income specialist in your area. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
And we hope that you're here with us next week, same time, same station. I'm David Scranton with Sarah Samuels, and you've been listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.